Gotta get that energy up. Woo woo.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because otherwise I will go back to sleeping on the couch.
Yeah, today's a sleepy day for us.
Today is definitely a sleepy day.
Today's like I have a lot of work to do. Today's Astrid's birthday, but I'm not gonna tell you the date, you astrology.
Yeah. You're just gonna have to guess.
You're gonna have to guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is the first bit of sun we've had in Sacramento quite some time, which is good.
Yeah.
Lindsey is getting into gardening, which is good because I am too.
Oh my god.
I woke up and cleaned like part of the garden.
Hell yeah, dude.
All the leaves fell and the storm happened, and I was like, I'm not going out there to clean the storm.
No, definitely not in the storm. I wanted to clean in the storm over the weekend, but then I was like, no, I shouldn't. And then I got sick anyway, and it was dumb, and I lost 3 days of work. Very upset.
I bought these solar panels so I can charge all my stuff, you know what I mean? And it worked, but then as soon as I got the solar panels, it rained for like a week straight. And I was like, cool.
It's okay. It's a benefit in the long run. You know, Sacramento's only gonna get sunnier and sunnier as climate change ruins our...
It's gonna get hotter and hotter.
It's gonna get hotter and hotter.
If we could find a way to make energy out of just normal heat, you know what I mean? Not like not like a geothermal heat.
Oh, right.
I mean, just like, I want something on my body that near my armpits that makes energy. I want to be able to get energy off of my body heat.
Yeah, that'd be pretty sweet. You know, it's funny, this entire week since it has been so freaking cold, Cody's all been like, Lindsey, why are your feet and your hands so cold? And it's because my body prioritizes the ute.
Yeah.
It just wants to save the little baby making machine.
Just be like, bro, I weigh 110. Ease off. Like, there's a person at my work who's just like, I need a boyfriend. And I was like, oh, are you like lonely or whatever? She's like, no, it's just cold. And I was like, that's what we are to you? She's like, yeah.
It's a space heater.
She's like, if I had you, I'd just never be cold. You weigh like 2 something, right? And I was like, yeah, but like, could also just eat pancakes. A lot of pancakes.
Oh, I want pancakes. If you didn't have to go right after this, I'm definitely in the mood where I'm like, let's do something other than work.
Yeah, I'm kind of in that mood too, not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Not going to pepperoni, but I would like some macaroni right now.
I don't know what you're saying.
I would like macaroni and cheese, not gonna lie.
Oh, yeah, I feel it.
Yeah.
I wish we could get macaroni and cheese.
What are we talking about today?
Alright, so today,
what are we talking about
the
today?
Mud Peddlers. That was a longer intro than normal, but it's kind of fun. Hopefully people enjoy it.
That was the intro? Are we doing intros now? Like that and then...
This is The Mud Peddlers, a podcast where 2 nerdy ceramic artists share the behind the scenes of their worlds of clay. We're your hosts, Lindsey M Dillon.
And I am Donte of Earth Nation. Welcome to the Mud Peddlers!
Oh my god, we really should re-record our intro because that's from before we had ever released an episode. That'll be for our 3 years of the Mud Peddlers. We'll redo our intro.
I try and redo the thing once every 3 years.
Yeah,
2 years,
I think that's good. Alright, so today we are doing part 2 of creating a body of work. So since last time we talked a little bit more about the technical side of that, mostly focusing on how to create consistency in your shapes, this week we're talking a little bit more about the kind of big brain ideas behind creating a body of work. I have a couple different points I wanna hit on, but I'm kind of curious, because essentially, how we were talking about this before we turn on the recorder,
right, is
that this section is kind of creating your own personal brand through creating a series.
Yeah.
So for someone who isn't sure about their brand, why do you think that creating a series can help them explore their brand? Not just creating one mug, but creating trying to create a family, a series.
This is just the way I am personally. This is not for every teacher. This is just for me. For beginner shapes, what you do is you learn all the shapes. In intermediate, you learn how to play with those shapes. Once you get into the advanced, or a little more than advanced, right? I call it adept. It's not a real phase. I just named it that. It's where you start learning how to express yourself through your shapes as the artist. And every bit of control or consistency is a facet of that expression. It's one of the reasons why I'm so, I wouldn't say against, but I'm not a fan of hyper-focused tools.
Oh, yeah.
Is because the more control I have, the more ability I have to express myself in the higher tiers of ceramic artwork. So to that extent, I think it's important to be able to create a consistent body of work that expresses you as the artist.
Yeah.
And I think that's purely important, not only for the consistency of your work so that you can improve upon your work, because if you're bouncing everywhere, You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not saying you have to stay in your lane. I'm just saying that if you have a certain way of expressing yourself through your work, you should try and improve that expression through time, and that becomes a standard for you and your work after a while, and then you can move on. But like, if you're bouncing up and down everywhere, you're never gonna master that one form of expression.
Yeah.
You know?
What that kind of actually reminds me of? It reminds me of this piece of advice that my one of my ceramics mentors gave to me a while back, and he was talking about it in terms of the context of like getting your bachelor's degree versus getting your master's degree or your MFA. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about the concept of like going wide versus going deep. So like what you're talking about, like that bouncing around, that to me is like the whole like going wide thing. It's when you're still relatively new to the medium of clay, mm-hmm. and you're just like, how does this thing work? Like, how do I make a cylinder versus a bowl versus kind of like the playing with the shapes. And then going deep is kind of like, okay, like I think you can go deep even if you're still a beginner on something.
Of course.
But it's more like hyper focusing on one specific technique. Like I think going deep on, say, like sgraffito, because, you know, again, like we've all, I think we all, or at least if you've dipped your toes into the world of clay, you've probably seen some sgraffito techniques, right?
If you've carved through underglaze, you've done sgraffito. But there's some people out there who are really good at it.
Yeah. And there's also different ways that you can like layer those techniques. So you do sgraffito, but you also do like, I don't know, like wax resist or something like that, you know? So it's like, I think the benefit of going deep and going deep in a series, or going deep by creating a series, is it helps you go past that initial first look. Because, like, I don't know, like, I'm not explaining myself well today.
No, it's fine. Like, I get the vibe you're trying to put out there. And I think it's just, I think for me, if I were to give it another term, it's just funneling. Where it's like, okay, you know how to make a bunch of cups, and that's cool, you're exploring that. But like, the amount of us who just like put a glaze on top of another glaze to make like drippy glazes, I wish that was more of a funnel. I wish that was more of like, I get that's a form of expression, I get that plenty of us go through that, I don't want to call it a phase, but It's a bit of a phase.
Well, it's also something, I don't know that it's fair to call it like a phase, because that feels dismissive.
It's like swirly mugs. Like, we all know how to do them. They're not, you know, I'm not going to say they're not cool, they're not special. I'm just saying, like, I got into a classroom and I was like, oh, so everybody can do this in the advanced class. They're like, yeah, we all went through the swirly mug phase. Yeah, like, yeah.
Okay, all right. I mean, I feel it.
I'm not saying it's not good. I'm saying it's probably a step of progression that is more wide than it is deep, because many of us explore that sooner or later.
Yeah.
But, like, if you've seen Old Forge's swirls, they're deep. Like, he understands how to do them, and that's part of his brand. When you see a swirly mug, people think Old Forge. Yeah. You know, when you see that serrated, you know what I'm talking about? That slip cast serrated form that, what's his name? Hammerly does?
Oh, yeah.
When people see that, they think Hammerly.
Yeah, that's true.
That's someone who went wide and all of a sudden said, okay, I really like this form. I'm going to keep expressing myself through this one thing. Mm-hmm. And now he's known for that. It is now part of his brand.
And he went deep.
And that is now part... And he went so deep, he has a slip cast shape for that one thing. Mm-hmm. That's the shape he makes. That's how much he likes it. That's how he expresses himself.
Yeah.
And that's what we know him for now. And that's part of his profile of work.
Yeah.
That's part of the branding, right? But most people who go wide, they just make a mug, and then they try to siphon down that mug and go deep into how they express themselves through that funnel or that siphon, right?
Yeah.
And those are just a couple examples of people who have done it.
Yeah.
Essentially. Versus, like, for me, I'm doing a lot of glaze chemistry right now.
Yeah.
And that's my form of deep, where it's like, I no longer care about, not company glazes, but like, when I see them, I'm like, I can make that. You know what I mean? I can probably make that better.
Yeah.
You know, but my deep form is, like, I want to make phase separation glazes that have multiple layers of texture, that do this on this clay body, and that, for me, I think is part of my deep brand.
Yeah.
Where if people see, like, my Angimon, my Greymon glaze, they're like, oh, Donte made that. This cup is in this color that Donte developed.
Yeah.
And I like that. That's a form of expression for me.
Those are Digimon, right?
Yes, they are.
Bless. I love that so much.
Look, listen. Hold on, listen. I'm going to start an argument right now.
I'm not arguing with you.
I'm going to start an argument. Digimon is a better anime than Pokemon, even though it didn't do a very good job of advertising itself.
Yeah.
If you watch the Digimon anime, there was stakes, there was death, there was crying. The people aged in Digimon. Every generation passed on to the next Digimon and things like that. And they grew with them, they talked to them. I'm tired of Ash Ketchum trying to rizz up Misty for the next 16 seasons with a rat Pokemon. It's a mouse Pokemon, Donte. It's not a rat. It's a rat now. A yellow rat, and I hate it. I have a hate for Pokemon.
Oh man, we're about to get so much hate mail.
I'm sorry. It's like Star Trek versus Star Wars. I don't hate Star Wars. I just think Star Trek is better because Star Wars is just opera with swords.
It is very space opera. It's like literally a space opera.
It's opera with light up swords and like telekinesis.
Yeah.
But if you took out one of those facets, you would drop most of the player base, most of the fan base, I think. We're off topic. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're off topic. No, that's okay. That's okay. We'll save that for a Night Peddlers episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the areas that I think I've gone deep in, like, I don't know, like, I think I've gone deep with a couple different shapes. Like, I think I really have narrowed down my, like, Stein shapes.
Yeah.
Because, again, like, I was going through old storage and, like, trying to clear out some inventory. And I found a mug or a Stein that I made even, like, a little over a year ago. And I was like, dang, like, I've improved since then. Like, I've gotten more Steiny. And I love that. But, yeah, but with, like, glazes, I'm still very, like, wide, I would say, in that sense, where I don't, you know, where I spend my time is mostly on developing new designs, like, and developing the concepts behind them.
And that's something you've chosen to express yourself through.
Yeah.
As for me, I've chosen glazes, and that's a perfect example. But like, we both know how to make glazes.
Yeah.
We can both do design. Well, you're a little better at design than you're for sure better. I can't draw. But we chose different paths, and now we're going deep into one thing, and that sooner or later becomes part of the profile of your work and how people know you express yourself.
Yeah.
And the people I named earlier, such as Hammerly or Old Forge, those are people who you can very clearly see have decided to whittle their work down into, like, okay, this is the standard of how I express myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Granted, I don't really know them like that. Like, you know, so they could be like me, where I just make cups and bowls to sell, and in their garage they have super like, I have work that y'all have not seen.
I'm pretty sure Hammerly always, sometimes he'll, like, bring out pieces that are, like, you know, very different. Like, he still seems to make time for exploring. It's just he's exploring within a certain world, and I feel like that's the kind of main thing that we're like, because you're always exploring, you're always learning things. It's just like, across how many different disciplines are you learning and exploring the things?
Yeah, for me, I'm like, I'm about to stop glaze chemistry. I'm just like, I think I'm good. I don't want to become an actual scientist. If I go any further, I'm going to become an actual chemist, and I don't think I feel like doing that.
How far are you through Matt Katz's videos, or Matt and Rose Katz's videos?
I'm 7/8 through the intermediate, the advancing glazes.
Oh my lord!
Because there's like the beginners, the intermediate glazes, and there's the advancing glazes. The crazy thing is that the way his classes work is that he goes from beginner to advanced, as if you've never made a glaze before.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But if you know how to make your own glazes and you have enough experience and you kind of know a little bit about glazes, a lot of the beginner information is very scientific, and a lot of the advanced stuff is very like, oh, if you've never made a glaze before, you might not know this. This happens when this happens, and this, and here's the combination of tin and chrome. So it's weird watching all the advancing glazes stuff. I'm like, I knew that. Why are you telling me that? But I didn't know half of the beginner stuff.
Oh, interesting.
All of the beginner stuff is chemistry, and I'm like, I didn't know about silica ratios and alumina ratios. Like, I had no idea about the Stoll chart, you know? Like, nobody told me. And the next packet of classes that I have of his that I haven't watched yet is the clay bodies one, and I think that's just gonna be how, like, glazes interact with clay bodies.
Interesting.
But of course, all I know is, like, there's porcelain, there's stoneware, and then there's brown clay,
earthenware.
And then there's, like, usually if I put a glaze on a white clay body or porcelain, it comes out as pure as it can. But, like, I just pretend there's a little more iron in there if I put it on a red clay body, and that's how the glaze will probably come out. End of story.
Yeah.
I don't deal with any other clays other than that. And I know someone's listening to this right now. Like, that's not the end of it.
Oh, I'm sure. That's barely the pinky. That's barely the first little overhanging nail on the pinky toe of information.
The tip of the willy.
Yeah.
As people with the free willy.
Oh.
Not like that kind of willy.
Oh, okay. So for those of our listeners who are, you know, less established in what they're doing, you know, kind of more on, like, not necessarily beginners, but for folks who have never done a series before, there's a couple like approaches that I want to suggest for how you can approach doing a series.
Here's your homework.
Here's your homework.
Here's your homework. You're getting homework early.
Okay, so there's 3 main sort of ways that I think you can go about making a series, a body of work. Mm-hmm. The first one is by focusing on the formal qualities. And I would say that has to do with shape, with size, like that's kind of more to do like what we were talking about with the last episode. Like, okay, I want to make a series of 5 mugs that all are under 5 inches tall and have, you know, a big round, that are like round shaped.
Like a bellied mug.
Like a bellied mug.
And those are just the basics. Shape we're talking about.
Yeah. But I mean, like that's, you know, that is challenging if you are still new to ceramics, for sure.
Yeah.
So that's the first one, is like focusing on the formal qualities of the mug itself. Mm-hmm. After that is focusing on like a technique or a process. So like we were talking about, you know, okay, I want to make a series of mugs, and it doesn't matter if they're all the same shape or size, but they're all gonna have a similar sgraffito design, mm-hmm. or they're all gonna be carved, and they're all gonna be, so it's like picking a specific process and then pushing it as far as you can within that particular series.
Yeah, see how far you can go with it.
Yeah, for sure. And like there's a concept that I think, I don't know, is fairly well known within like the idea of creating designs, is that whenever you're thinking about a design that you want to do, mm-hmm. come up with at least like 5 or 6 different options, mm-hmm. because the first couple are most likely going to be the kind of things that we're all kind of used to seeing, you know?
Yeah.
But the further you push it, the more that piece is going to be, because you're going past the initial like ideas. And I think for those who may not know, like, okay, all right, Lindsey, you're saying push it. How do you push it, right? For me, my favorite thing is to have combinations. Oh, so so okay, so you want to do sgraffito. What if you did sci-fi mushroom sgraffito? Mushrooms. That's the first thing they come up with. Hey, you know what? Mushrooms are in vogue right now. So I'm suggesting
just mushroom girls on Instagram. I don't understand them.
It's a thing. But have you seen sci-fi mushrooms? Like, what would a sci-fi mushroom look like? Would it be like vaguely, you know, cyberpunk-esque? What would that look? So it's like, so if you're trying to push,
it's a metal mushroom,
right? Yeah. So it's like, if you're, and that kind of moves a little bit into this next like idea, this third idea. So we have formal qualities, we have technique and process, and then we have like the concepts behind a piece. So what if this, I'm going off of this sci-fi mushroom thing now.
God. And they sexualize them too. It's weird on Instagram.
I'm sure.
Half-naked mushrooms, and I'm like, who came up with this?
Well, I mean,
who's this horny for vegetables?
You know what? People have been horny for vegetables all throughout history.
I get cucumbers. I understand cucumbers.
But mushrooms, they're like
mushrooms?
They're like little fey people. Little fey people have a history of being like, oh, they steal you away and ho ho ho.
They're mushrooms!
So what if for this sci-fi mushroom series, you didn't necessarily come up with the sci-fi mushroom series first, but you were like, okay, I want to make a series of mugs that focuses on our relationship with nature. And then through that process, you could end up with sci-fi mushrooms, right?
Yeah, you go outside, pick up some leaves, and print them into your work, and then, you know, be nice.
Yeah.
Have a little nature in your work.
Yeah.
And then sooner or later, you know, that's the broad, and then you get real good at that. You're real good at that. And you start picking up roses, and then you get a roller. You get a roller, and you start. This is better for compressing.
Yeah.
And now I can put glaze. I can put underglaze in there. Mm-hmm. Oh, and then I can put a different color on the outside of the glaze and the underglaze. Ooh, I can make it clear. It's gonna be oh my god. And then you have a whole line of cups and bowls with little dandelions on them, and hippie girls who go to Coachella will buy them and be like, ooh, look how nature I am, while they have their $700 iPhone in their hand.
Oh my god.
It's some artisanal dweller.
You criticize society, and yet you are a part of society.
I know, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I
Starbucks.
I know. It's okay, I hear you. And I feel like, again, that's why I'm suggesting combining things because again, it's like, yes, there are fads with things, right? Like there's fads with mushrooms, there's fads with crystals. Not to say there's anything wrong with that by any means, but it's more
it's just a passing time.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with it.
And there are ways that you can, again, like we've talked about before, you can, like, it's not copying somebody else's work if you are like taking an aspect of what they do and then combining it with something else that you do as well. I
want to tell you the deepest I ever heard in my life.
Okay,
the deepest business thing I ever heard in my life from Lord Drake. Some of you might just know him as Drake, though. So yeah, I call him by his first name, Lord. No, he said it's not about who did it first; it's about who did it better, and that's kind of true. That's kind of true. If you are competing with someone online who is doing the same thing as you, and they're mid at it, and you're really good at it, and you can market yourself all pretty well, guess who's getting the quality product?
Yeah.
I'm buying it from you. I'm not buying it from the other guy.
Yeah.
Who just...
Now, admittedly, obviously, don't full-on copy exactly what they're doing, because even if you can copy what they're doing and do it better, that's still, like, sexy.
that's a bit of stealing, to be honest.
Yeah.
But, like, also, it's, you know what I mean? Like there's a difference in quality, and usually the quality product wins. You know what I mean? Like, there's a bunch of TVs out there, but you're looking up reviews about which one is made better to buy, for sure. If you ever buy a TV, shoes the same way, cars the same way, Hondas are known for being reliable. For businesses, it's just marketing and who did it better, because everyone has the same idea, and there's no such thing as an original idea.
Yeah.
There's no I want you to look at me. There's no such thing as an original idea, and piggybacking off of that, it's not about who did it first, it's about who did it better.
Yeah.
On God, no cap.
No cap, I know what that means. Yeah.
You stole my idea. No. Someone had the idea first. I'm just better at it.
I think I get what you mean. Like it's yeah.
Come over there and
oh my God, Donte!
Sorry.
Oh my God.
Sorry. I drop the mask sometimes, my bad.
No, you're good. I'm here for it. I just have to edit that out. Maybe we'll just put in a long bleep, like that one time.
No, we did that one long bleep, and Ryan Durbin messaged me, and he's like, "What'd you say?" And I was like, "Don't worry about it." And he's like, "I want to know so bad."
Oh my God. Oh, excellent.
He's like, "It was hilarious." And I was like, "Good."
Oh, good. I'm glad
you liked it.
Yeah, that was...
I like that Ryan listens to our podcast.
I like that too. It makes me happy.
Yeah.
Okay, I feel like there's more things that I want to say, but I'm a little brain dead right now, and I'm trying to figure out how to
carry a little bit?
No, I mean, I think it's like I want to give people a little bit more tangible examples or tangible, I don't know, or maybe like ideas for how they could go about creating a series.
I think the main goal for a person who's trying to express themselves, to make a profile of work in order to create, as you would call, like a series, is to pick something that you know how to do. Like, we all know how to make bowls and cups and XYZ and XYZ, right? Plates and whatnot.
Although, admittedly, like, our listeners may not.
Oh.
Like,
okay, so whatever you know how to do, right? But as potters, like, we have a certain set of skills that we learned or were taught in class or taught by someone on the internet, you know what I mean? And you take that and you try to just make it as yours as possible. I don't really care what you like. You could like robots. I don't care if you like robots. You could like flowers. You could like this game called Destiny 2. It's really good, by the way. And you just try and incorporate some ideas from your everyday life, because realistically, as a person, you are affected by your environment, but you're gonna that's gonna leak into your work, and you might as well just go full force. You might as well. You like cats? Make some cat cups.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Do it.
Sell them on Etsy.
Yeah.
That hurt me so much to say.
Oh, Donte, you're growing.
That hurt me so
you're
much
accepting them. I love it.
No, I don't accept them. They're leeches, I say.
Oh my God.
They're leeches.
I hella made a cat cup earlier this year, so, you know. But I think, like...
They're like, oh, I could make the tail of a handle. Yeah, you and everyone else who has that idea.
Oh my God. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
I guess.
Yeah. To me, that feels like an... Okay, like, so let's go with the cat mug idea, right? So if you were... I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I
brought it on myself.
We're on this train now.
Oh my God.
So...
The one in Ohio?
Oh, hopefully not.
Not that one.
Not that one.
Well, that's why we're going to Ohio, actually. We're going to fix that problem.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Conspiracy theory.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway. So if you are making a cat mug, right? Or like you want to figure out how to incorporate cats into your work, right?
Yes, perfect.
In my mind, there's a few different ways that you can go about doing that.
Yes.
You could approach it from a more illustrative perspective where you are using the surface. My cat literally just ran by. Oh my god. Anyway, you can approach it from a more illustrative perspective where you're using the surface of the mug, or I'm just gonna go with a mug for the sake of the example.
Mugs are easy, yeah.
Yeah.
The t-shirt of clay.
Pretty much, yeah. Where you can create a scene based on the idea of cats. Like you could have multiple cats. You could create a narrative along the.
Of course, you narrative.
Of course, it's narrative. I'm gonna just list a few different examples.
Yeah, go please. Yeah.
Okay. So you could make a narrative. Like you could create a scene almost like it's an illustrated book on the outside of your cup. So you could have a cat in maybe 4 different panels along the mug, almost like a comic book, right? So that's like one approach, where you have the illustrative and you're making it like a narrative. You could also have illustrative and then make it more about the different forms that are on the cup. Like, so you could have an illustration, but instead of it being a narrative going around and it's like a scene, you could have cat butts, because everybody loves cat butts now.
Do they?
So yeah, they do. Yeah.
What's up with you guys looking at buttholes on cat mugs, huh?
It's just a thing. It's a thing.
Get help.
No, don't get up. There's nothing wrong with it. So you could, again, using sgraffito, using underglaze, using, there's, again, many different approaches. You could create a sprig mold and then do a little mini sculpture of the cat mug and attach it. Well, that kind of gets more into like the sculptural realm more than the illustrative. Yeah. So that's within the more illustrative style. Then there's 2 different ways you could approach it. So that's just with illustration. You could also approach it from a more sculptural perspective where you're using the mug as a stand-in for the body of the cat. And that's where you see the kind of thing where it's like the handle is the tail and there's a little X where the cat butt is and the paws are the little feet.
You could definitely do that little anthropomorphic kind of. Yeah, you could.
Yeah.
For me, it's more, if I were to give advice, it would be to pick that path. Let's continue with the cat mug, right?
Yeah.
You pick that path. And then you start off with, okay, you made a regular old Walmart looking mug. It's just a cylinder with a handle on it, right? And then you drew whiskers and a nose and some cat eyes on there. Mm-hmm. I could tell it's a cat from that point.
Yeah.
Right? That's fine. But then you get a stamp. And you start stamping little paws on there.
Yeah.
You're getting a little better. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then you go, well, some people said it looks like a dog. You know what I mean? And then you start, putting ears on the side, start sculpting ears, and then you're like, okay, well, now it's cat ears. They know it's a cat.
Yeah.
And then you start getting a texture tool, and you start putting slip on your mug, and you start running through it and sgraffitoing, and it's a black cat with a white clay body. So now, as you carve through, you now have the texture for the hair.
Yeah.
You get better and better and better and better, and you start coming up with more ideas, and you start applying more of the tools that are on your belt to express yourself in the art that you wanted to make even more.
Yes.
For me, that's how I think about it, where it's like you start off with the basic, and you got so exact that you became really good at expressing what you thought was your artistic style through this one thing. And now it looks like a cat. It's not very functional. It has ears it's going to poke in the eye. But I saw this cat mug once had ears on the very top of the...
Yeah, I've seen those. When you tilt it, it's going to stab you in the eye.
It's going to stab you in the eye.
It's the perfect representation of cats.
But there's someone that's just like, oh, it's a cat.
Oh my god, so judgy. Oh so judgy, Donte. Oh my god. I can't even handle you, Donte.
That's how they sound. It's not my fault. I'm just giving the correct depiction of the straw man.
Oh my god.
It's not even.
The correct depiction of the straw man. Oh my god.
That's an oxymoron right there.
It's kind of great though. I love this. Class A humor, bro. Class A humor. Yeah. No, I think I hear you. Like when you're talking about that progression of starting with drawing a nose and whiskers on a cup, your first series could be just that.
Yes.
Like you could make 5 different cups with the nose and the whiskers, and each one is a different glaze color.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that could be your first thing. But what you're talking about in terms of layering techniques and building upon those techniques, that feels like that is full on when you're beginning to create a bit of a brand for yourself and creating a not just a series but a full-blown body of work, which I like.
And the cool thing is that once you do that one thing for that one exact expression you want to do, you just move on to the next thing, right? So for example, with me and glazes, I really wanted to make a face separation glaze. I recently made it.
I have no idea what that means.
Face separation. You know when you glaze something, the glazes usually combine, and they become a new glaze.
Right. Yeah.
Face separation is they developed at the same time on the same clay body.
Okay.
And they both came out. They didn't really combine. That's all it is.
Okay.
There are two glazes that separated.
Okay.
Like oil spot glazes are famous for being phase separation glazes.
Okay.
Because you got the oil spots, you got one glaze on top of another glaze.
Okay.
And they still both developed in the same glaze matrix, but they didn't combine. They didn't become a new glaze.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, I think I understand.
I still kind of don't understand. Yeah, like, I mostly understand. They keep, whenever I listen to the Matt Katz thing, they like do all these technical terms, and I'm like, I feel like this is just you combine two glazes that didn't combine, but they both came out on the same glaze matrix, and you're just calling it phase separation.
I don't really even know what the glaze matrix is.
It's just the glaze. It's the glaze.
Okay.
But matrix sounds cooler.
It does sound cooler.
It sounds right. It sounds way
cool.
cooler.
Glaze
Yeah.
matrix.
Yeah.
Certo. Okay, anyway, carry on.
But like, I really wanted to make a specific type of red, not Tim Chrome, not tin chrome.
Dude, your straw mans are just popping up like whack-a-mole. They're not there.
I hate tin chrome so much.
Oh my god. Okay, stay on point.
It's
stay on point.
violet with extra steps.
Cool. Okay.
It's not
all right.
red.
Carry on. All right.
So I made it an iron red, and I finally did it.
Okay.
But like for me, that's very exact because getting a red in oxidation that's actually red from red iron oxide, very difficult.
Yeah.
Very difficult for me. Usually it requires a hold. But that for me took X amount of months. Like knowing how to make a glaze would be the general, and then whittling it down and down and down and funneling it into the way I want to express myself with this particular color is the way that I do the process that we're talking about today.
Yeah.
You know what? You were talking about a narrative and drawing things on your cups. You know who does that really well? Tim C.
Yes.
Tim C is the guy that would be the perfect example for that situation.
Yeah.
Because like it's just a cylinder mug. It's just a regular old mug. But then he like gives it some zhuzh. He zhuzhes it up.
I don't even know if I could call it just a regular mug. I mean, they've got
it's good.
They've got a really great.
It's
shape
just
to
the
them.
shape is regular, but like there's a narrative and there's a robot and.
Yeah, he's got a whole kind of world behind his pieces, which I didn't even know about
He's
until
got like a post-apocalyptic thing going on with his.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm into it. If you ever talk to Tim, I don't want to overstep because he always says like it's from a word of mouth that the story is told, and so whenever you meet him, he tells part of the story.
Yeah.
And I've met him like 2 or 3 times, so I know part of the story.
Oh my god.
So now when I look at his mugs, my eyes go, I know what's going on.
Yeah.
But to most people, they're like, it's just a robot. It's just a little can robot.
Yeah. That's part of what I find so interesting about when your work has a concept behind it.
Yes.
Because it's often, like, sometimes people will, like, because there's this, again, this whole idea where when you're looking at art, and I'm going to consider ceramics art, 'cause that's a whole other argument, but I'm calling it art in this situation.
It is indeed an argument.
It is an art, yeah. So when you're looking at art, there's the idea that like the viewer brings their own perspective to it, right? And that influences like how people perceive the piece.
Of course. And then there's the intent of the artist, of course.
Yeah, and then there's the intent of the artist, yeah. So that's what's really what I find interesting and important about being able to talk about your art. Now, if it being ambiguous is part of the point, like for Tim's work, he doesn't have that story laid out. Like he shares it in like bits and pieces, and that's part of the whole experience, which is kind of neat because then that's like almost getting into like performance art.
It's episodic
territory.
for him.
Yeah.
Those TV shows that are like they don't have a consistency. You can just watch them little bit by little bit, like Aqua Teen Hunger Force or something like that.
Yeah.
That's the way Tim's work is to me.
Yeah. I probably have a bias in terms of pushing conceptual work because I went to art school. I went to UC Santa Cruz. I got my degree in art, and that particular program was very focused on definitely more concepts rather than technique and process and like the formal qualities.
What do you mean by
things.
Conceptual? Like work that has a concept to it?
Yeah, so it's like
were they not pro that or like?
They were so by conceptual work.
Yeah.
I mean pieces that have a message or idea behind them that is not necessarily explicit in the piece itself.
Got it.
Or
okay.
may be explicit, but like has varying degrees of like obviousness. Okay. Like for instance, the whole mushroom, this whole sci-fi mushroom, like that could just be because you like mushrooms and you like sci-fi and you're like, what if I combine these two?
Right.
And that's totally fine. That I would argue is less conceptual than, let's say you're like, okay, mushrooms, sci-fi, okay, there's this really interesting perceived separation between what is natural, what is in the natural world, and what is human-made, what is constructed, what is mechanical, what is machinery, right? And so by combining a mushroom, which kind of is a stand-in for the natural world,
right.
and let's just say mechanical illustrations. I'm just going to go with an illustration thing.
Yeah.
So by combining those two elements with the intention of exploring the relationship between the natural world and the human created world, I would say that is a concept.
Okay.
Like, and the artist might have a specific idea that they're trying to push. Like, maybe they're trying to say that the power of human-made construction things are so powerful that they are fundamentally changing the nature of nature.
That's hot.
Right? Like, yeah, like, like that could be the concept. Or it could be that, and this is, again, I'm thinking about different ways that you could approach this same illustration on a cup of a mushroom that has a sci-fi theme to it. Yeah. Like, it could be that. It could be the idea that, like, oh, despite the perceived separation between the natural world and the human created world, we can find a balance, right? So those are all conceptual elements to the mug, but someone looking at the mug is just gonna see sci-fi mushroom, or they're gonna see a mushroom with like some mechanical elements added onto it or something.
Might be a deeper meaning to it.
Right, there might be.
I gotcha.
There might not, yeah. So I think like part of what's interesting about approaching a series from a conceptual basis is that you could have a really wide variety of manifestations of that concept. So like if you're going with the whole natural world versus human created world, you could have sci-fi mushroom, but you could also have, I'm trying to think of something out. I'm trying to pull something out of my ass.
You're good. You're fine. You've explained it.
Okay.
Yeah, I promise.
Okay.
You're
I'm
good.
sorry. I got on a train. I got on a train. Okay.
You don't have to. I feel like I asked what's conceptual art, and you're like, no, like it's fine.
I'm sorry.
It's artwork with a story.
It's artwork, yes. But I feel like
whether it's from the artist or the viewer.
Well, I wanna be able to. The reason I wanna explain it in such excruciating detail is because things like that are not always obvious to people.
Yes.
And I wanna explain it to someone as though someone has not gone to art school and gone through all of the. You know, so yeah, I'm sorry.
Lindsey has artwork school trauma, though.
I kind of do. No, I super appreciate it, though, because again, like, okay, no, I'll stop.
You're good. You're fine.
I'll stop.
I just wanted to know whether the school you went to, was it like pro-conceptual work versus the skilled, or? Yes,
it was very pro-conceptual work.
But they didn't teach you a lot of mechanical skills but like they didn't give you more tools on your belt to build the house. Physical ones.
They kind of did. Like we learned, you know, like I took like oil painting, I took sculpture, and so, you know, we learned how to work with different tools.
Yeah.
But it was more that the idea, the concept behind the piece was more important than, it seemed to me that the concept behind the piece was more important than
the craft.
Kind of. Like you still had to make stuff. Like the craft aspect of it was still important, but like okay, for example, in my intro to sculpture class, and this was intro, like first class, you are in college, you are a freshman, and you are taking an intro to sculpture class, and the professor said I could not make anything that was representational. Meaning I could not make anything, like I could not make a bust of like a human form. I could not make a dog. I could not make a cat. I could not make a mushroom.
I love that. I love that. Oh.
Dude, but no,
That's my biggest pet peeve with sculpture, is that they only make things that represent other things.
Oh, man.
It's my biggest pet peeve. A sculptor's like, I made a cat. How'd you do that? I was looking at a picture of a cat.
Oh my god. Okay.
And then I tried to make it as close as I could to look like a cat.
No. So this is a really good example of how we have had very different approaches, very different experiences of what we've been exposed to in terms of art.
Yes.
Because for me, like I was exposed almost exclusively to conceptual art.
Really?
Yeah, to the point where it wasn't until I was a senior at Santa Cruz where I actually got to make the kind of art I wanted to make.
Yeah.
Because it was like, and how do I say it? Like, okay, I'll put it this way.
Yeah.
I had a friend who wanted to get their master's degree at UC Santa Cruz because they wanted to be a children's illustrative artist.
Okay.
Santa Cruz basically told her, we don't do illustration here.
What do you...
The implication is that...
What do you mean illustration? Like you don't draw like what?
The implication there is that illustration has to do with an industry. Like, oh, you're drawing illustrations for children's books. That's an industry. That's not art.
Oh, so they went in like, you're just going to try and make money off it.
Yeah.
And we
want the concepts.
We want capital A art. We don't want none of that regular
Yeah, but also we're not, and again, I feel bad because I don't want to like, you know. No, I'm okay. I know we're totally like...
And use it for your garden to grow your plants.
I I have. And honestly, anyone who has either been on my Patreon or like, you know, I've talked about this before, how it's like, I have a bit of a chip on my shoulder about how Santa Cruz, you know, does not prepare its students. Maybe that's changed since I've been there.
Yeah.
But it does not prepare you for life after graduation. It tells you, I feel like the program really, like, I know how to talk about my art because of UC Santa Cruz. I know how to introduce concept into my work, and I think my work is better because of my time at UC Santa Cruz. However, the program does not have a focus on how to actually help you survive after you have graduated. And that's my biggest beef, is that there seems to be that kind of classic, it's not art, it's a craft. And like, that's what was annoying. So like, you could not, like, if you wanted to go to UC Santa Cruz and get really good at double humped gourds, they'd be like, no.
That's wild.
Right? Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. So anyway, but that's a long answer to a short question bro.
I think that's a perfect example of what we're talking about today on the pod. I think you think that was a tangent. It wasn't.
Okay.
That's a perfect example.
Okay, tell me how, because I don't...
No, because realistically what I'm talking about is the craft. Like, the way I was taught to execute a form, and then those were the tools on my belt that I was given to build the house. And the house that I built was the ability to express myself in the artistic world. I've met so many people that are the product of exactly what you're talking about, and it confuses me. Because now it seems to me that they are classically trained, I guess, concept artists. I'm classically trained, like, craft artist. Like, I craft first, I conceptualize after the craft. Or rather, if I want to make something, I craft quality work. Not saying that you can't craft quality work if you're a conceptual artist. But the amount of artists that I've met that come from an art college, and they, like... And this is gonna make you mad. This is gonna make smooth. Like, the quality of your work is just like,
oh my god,
your walls are super thick and thin in certain places. You're like, you didn't sculpt. It took you like 1,000 years to make the thing.
Well, that's because they're not taught. Like,
they're not taught.
Yeah, I mean, like, I was that way. Like, so when I came back from UC Santa Cruz and I went to Sac City to start learning how to wheel throw, my mugs were awful. Like, awful. And then the hardest thing was, like, because again, I came from a sculptural concept background, and I wanted to make creatures that had a concept behind them. Just because they were representative doesn't mean that they didn't have, like, I wasn't interested in making quote unquote just fantasy creatures, right? Like, my creatures have a story and a message behind them. I didn't know how to wheel throw. And last little thing, because
I'm listening. Like, I'm here for it.
Up. Is like, so the hardest thing for me to figure out was when I was like, okay, I want to get better at wheel throwing. I had no idea how to decorate my work, because I was like, I don't know, like,
They just do any techniques.
No, but that's the thing. I couldn't figure out how to make something that I was actually interested in. I knew how to do sgraffito. I knew how to do these techniques, but I was like, nothing I make is interesting to me. How do I make something that is interesting to me, because I come from this sculptural background? And that's how I eventually, like, again, you know, I think the first series that I remember making that I was like, this feels like the beginning of something new, is when I made a series of small cups that had different types of horns for the handle. And for me, that was like, oh, okay, this is how I can start combining my sculptural concept brain with wheel throwing. But it took a really long time to then figure out, like, okay, from there, how do I want to make a mug that feels like a Lindsey mug?
How are you gonna execute that?
How am I gonna, it's like, I had a total lack of ideas. And what I ended up...
That's wild.
Yeah. Well, because again, I came from this totally other background. So I bought a book, there's this book I still have called, you know, Surface Design for Ceramics. And I bought that because I was like, okay, how do I, you know, like, how do I do the things, you know? Because what I was seeing around me, I feel like I still need, like, again, I needed more tools in the tool belt. So that beginning to see how other artists started to do it helped me figure it out. And then I think the first mugs that felt like they were like me was when I started doing the whole stat mugs. So when I came up with a design that was, okay, this references, it's conceptual kind of, because it references like a video game, like, and that kind of thing.
But it's your experience. D&D.
And then, anyway, so long story short, what I'm trying to say is that it's okay if you feel like you have a lack of ideas right now in terms of, like, how to make a mug that feels like yours. But continue to explore things. And the biggest things that I would say, the biggest piece of advice that I would recommend is, first of all, well, two things. First of all, look at other artists work, a wide variety of other artists' work, not just ceramic artists, like other artists as well, and then combine things. Like for me,
combine
I think my most interesting pieces are where I've combined either concepts or like techniques. And I think like concepts, again, for me is like a big one, like sci-fi mushrooms.
Back to the sci-fi.
I rest my peace.
Rest my peace.
Oh my god.
No, I think that's good because I have the opposite problem where you have a lot of concepts.
Yeah.
And the execution was difficult for you at first. I have so many tools on my belt that I have a tool shed. So when I have books that give me ideas, I open the book and go, oh, I forgot I could do that. I no longer look at a technique and go like, how is that done? Unless it's really rare.
Yeah.
At this point, I look at a book of techniques and I go, I forgot I know how to do like most of this.
Yeah.
I just stopped doing it. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, do you ever feel like you want more of a conceptual thing, or is it because it didn't really ever seem like that was your focus?
No, I have conceptual work. They don't really have a story. They're more of making. So like in the art world, at least, there's different. And at least
I'm just thinking like, oh boy, Dante's about to say a broad statement about the art world. Okay.
Well, this is what I was actually taught in art class, right?
Okay,
There's usually different ways art can be used in society, and it can be hiding secrets. It could be telling a story. It could be a social piece. A social piece is something that my teacher called like. I really wanted to make a sculpture with a hood on it with a bunch of bullet holes in it called Trayvon out of black clay just to make a social statement. Just like that, you can...
And that's I would say a highly conceptual piece.
Highly conceptual piece, right. Yeah. And there's, of course, the regular one that we all do is making regular items, like everyday items, beautiful. Is the most like standard thing that most of us do.
Yeah, I could say, because we make mugs that are... Or
there's more attractive than mugs.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be pigeonholed into that one thing. As sooner or later, I want to make social pieces. I want to make conceptual art.
Yeah.
My issue is that I always feel as though I don't have enough tools on my belt to build the perfect house. So whenever I have like a really nice piece, it's like 1.5 feet tall, has a crystal on top, it's really thin, really nice, very fragile, and I finally, after 2 years, developed a glaze that I'm like, I think I could put a glaze on that.
Oh.
It's just been on, and so I have work.
Yeah.
The other issue for me, personally, is that I don't have anywhere to put the work unless I want to give it to an auction. There's no art studios that are coming up to me and going, hey, we would like you in our art show.
Yeah,
I have to
that's
struggle. Like Instagram gives me more exposure than the freaking art store down the street does, which is sad.
I mean, in some ways, that's great in a lot of ways though, because again, like for so long, galleries have been the arbiters of what becomes like they've been the gatekeepers. Yeah,
literally. And
but I mean, there are some advantages though. Like if you did, if you have these larger pieces, like have you tried selling them on, like, I mean, I don't know, I guess, okay.
I guess but they're fragile.
Yeah.
The issue is that, like, I have one, and a lot of them are sculpture. I have pots that I sculpt on top of the pots. I alter the form. And then I'm always like, I could probably sell that for, like, $300 on my website. Somebody would buy that.
Bro, you have to sell for way more than that.
I gotta get out of my studio. It's beautiful, but, like, I need it out so I can create more better stuff.
I feel that,
but I'm also like, oh, I can't really, like, if that bumps, it breaks.
I mean, but I guess that's where you'd have to figure out how to ship it.
Yeah.
Or have it be like somebody's gonna come and pick it up.
In multiple boxes.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of art galleries at this point. I don't know. That's a whole. I was
gonna say we should actually have somebody on to talk about that because I think that'd be really interesting.
Because in order to survive, in order to survive, they have to take a cut. But like, I don't want to give them a cut for what I could easily do on Facebook. Like, I don't know. That's a whole different subject.
That's a whole different subject. Yeah.
But I do have conceptual work and I do have sculpts. Like I slab sculpted something last week. It's like it looks like a bat'leth from Star Trek, and it's on top of a big pot that I threw and I put holes in it, and it's supposed to be nice. So there's no real concept to it. It's just a sculpture on top of a pot. And I was like, this is nice. And then I was like, that would break if I put it in the mail. That would immediately break. No way. I would have to send it in 2 separate boxes. Maybe.
Yeah.
Something like that. But I made it because I was like, I have this new glaze. It's red. It's pure red. It's made of iron. I'm going to put it on this brown pot. It's going to be so red. It's going to be so hot. And then I was like... Oh no one's gonna buy this. It's huge and expensive. No.
I would say though, especially like again, a little message to the listener here, but like I think if you're interested in exploring something, that's where you go wide.
Yes.
But I think the going wide is important, and I think it's important to like because again, even though you've been most of the work that you sell is like mugs and things like that. Like I think for you, you've always said that like not getting cornered into doing just one thing has always been really important for you. And again, bringing in like Curt Hammerly, he has his slip cast mugs that he does, but he also explores other things. So it's like you can step back and forth between going wide and going deep. And I think that, especially if you're feeling like your creative juices are drying up, consider whether you need to go wide or go deep again.
TLDR, experiment.
Yeah.
And when you experiment with how you want to express yourself with a certain shape or a certain tool, as it were, on your belt, you need to get really good at using that tool, and that's how you express yourself better.
Yeah. In summary.
In summation.
In summation, making a body of work is important because it allows you to push beyond your comfort zone in terms of specific techniques, and it gives you a chance to explore the beginnings of your own personal brand or your own personal, like, what is a mug that feels like it is yours? And I think developing a series helps you do that. There's a few different ways that you can approach that. You can approach a series by focusing on the formal qualities. Like, again, we talked about last episode, where you're thinking about the shape, the size, the handle, etc., etc. Mm-hmm. You can focus on the technique or the process, like carving or sgraffito or combining different techniques. And again, as you're doing that, go through several different iterations, like sketch out 5 to 6 ways that you can explore that topic. And same thing with the last way that you can approach it, which is the conceptual basis, which is the ideas behind the physical thing that you are making. That's that.
It's a hard sell, because at the same time I know there's plenty of you who are really good at one thing, much like many of us are, and that's the way you've chosen to express yourself. But the message I'm trying to send in a broad sense is don't be afraid to experiment as well, mm-hmm. to find new ways to express yourself and to put new tools on the belt, as it were, to build. And I'm not saying your house is bad, I'm just saying to build a better house.
Yeah.
And I get very frustrated whenever I see, especially ceramic, I won't say beginners, in their first couple years, who figure out they're really good at doing one thing and they do that one thing forever. Mm. And I'm like, you built a nice house with that one thing, but your house could be so much better if you just experimented a little bit. Mm. If you just like, you know, the Dirty Potter Challenge #4 just came out. I made a video about it.
Yeah.
I finally put one out.
Hell yeah.
And I asked people, I said, go in your environment. You know, I want a bowl. I want a set of ramen bowls. I want you to go out into your environment, push things against your clay, sculpt some stuff. I want texture from your environment. And they've all failed me. Every one of them have failed me.
Oh my god.
They all just made regular bowls.
Okay.
Or they didn't find any texture in their environment. Like, you know how much texture is on the bottom of your shoe?
So much texture.
So, you know, your tires, the fan in the corner of your room has so much like spread texture the glaze look beautiful in.
Oh yeah.
But like, one person got a rock, like a really nice rock, and that's probably the best one I've seen so far.
Okay.
But like, I want out there, like, I want people to experiment and get out of their shell. And it's so frustrating for me to see that people are like, I'm gonna be different, and they...
Space Donte. It takes, I think
I'm so disappointed!
I think what's challenging is that when we...
The chair, that chair right there would make great texture. I know. Bike over there,
Donte, I know.
The grill on the barbecue over there, that fence is good over there.
It's the thing is, when we first start thinking about trying a thing, most of the time I would say that the thing that we think of first is going to be the thing that everybody thinks of first.
Yeah, and I don't
Yeah, and but that's okay, because sometimes I think it takes doing that to then realize, oh, I want to push this further because everybody else also does the same thing.
I hope they don't make one set and they're like, I'm done.
I think it takes going through the process. And that's again, I think part of the reason why I also suggest like sketching out a few different ideas, like even like 10. Think about 10 different, like if you're focusing on texture, right? Like think about 10 different objects that you could use to create texture, because somebody might think of like a rock first.
Marbles,
right?
even.
Marbles, yeah. Literally anything.
Marbles,
so it's like
anything.
Yeah. So I think it's okay. Like, I guess what I would say is that I think creating a series will help push people the way that you're talking about experimenting. Like, I think like creating a series is kind of about going deep, but it also, to stretch this metaphor too far, it also sort of helps you go wide. Because if you're if you're trying something new that's going wide, and then you're pushing that as far as you can,
You have to experiment.
you have to
after a while.
experiment. Yeah. And I think
I'm just so frustrated.
One last example I'll give. Is like, okay, so I read a book on like creature design, like concept and creature design, character creature design. And this artist talked about, okay, how do you push a concept until it breaks? And the example he gave was like, how do you
Break
like
the
if you're gonna make like an undead knight, what's the most simple form? Okay, and then take those same elements and push it farther. So like for instance, if you're doing exploring texture with a rock, what if you're like your starting point could be like pushing that rock into the side of the bowl, and then okay, what if you did a vertical row of those same indentations. And then what if you threw the rock at the bowl?
Yes.
Like, you know,
please.
So keep pushing it, keep experimenting. And I think that sounds like that's the sense of frustration, is like you're wanting people to push things.
I really want, and like, I don't know. I feel so...
He wants you to move it.
I would even take a bowl that you would just like score and slip texture onto. Like, not a single person has rolled out a slab of clay, gotten it, and pushed it against the bark of a tree, cut it, and then put that on the bowl with scoring and slipping. That would have been fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's just a tree. Those are free, my guy. They're outside.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's part of the thing we're doing here is we're trying to, it may seem obvious to us because we've been in this world forever, dude. But like if you have never explored this, how are people gonna know? How are people gonna know to think about that? And that I think is part of our job, is like if we are helping people explore things, I think it's okay to kind of hold their hand through part of the process, because if you've never explored these ideas before, you're not really gonna know where to start. So if you tell someone pick texture, they may not know. I don't know. I mean, again, I don't know what people actually submitted, but I'm trying to leave some room.
A disappointed father is what I am.
Oh my god.
You should have pulled out a slab, gone to Costco, pushed the slab of clay into the employee's face, and named the piece the minimum wage depression. And I would have been more impressed with these things that you guys are giving me right now.
And that's it for today. Thank you for listening to The Mud Peddlers with Lindsey M Dillon
and Donte of Earth Nation.
Want to say hi and see what Donte and I are working on in our studios? Check out the show notes for links to our websites and social media below. You can find me at lindseymdillon.com. That's LINDSEY, M as in monster, DILLON.com, and on Etsy, Instagram, and Facebook at Lindsey M Dillon.
And you can find me at Earth Nation Ceramics. It's spelled exactly how you think it's spelled, but you can also find me on my Facebook fan page and Instagram at the same name, at Earth Nation Ceramics.
If you enjoyed hanging out with us today, or you have a question or topic you'd like us to discuss, take a second to rate and review The Mud Peddlers in Apple Podcasts. It helps our podcast reach new listeners, and we really appreciate the feedback. Thanks again, and we'll catch you next time.